Hey everybody, I'm back for another round of questions and answers, this time with a better late than never edition. Sorry this is coming out a couple days late, but life's been pretty hectic around here lately. But enough about my personal life, so let's get to those questions. Alright, so we've got our question from Nicholas this month. Nicholas asks, with the year wrapping up soon, I was wondering what films you saw this year that surprised and or disappointed you relative to your expectations before seeing them. Well, I think I've at least touched on this a little bit in one of the previous questions I answered, but it's hard for me to say that there are many films I see these days that just straight up surprise me. I spent a very long time, years and years watching a lot of movies, and at a certain point when you watch that many movies, you just kind of get a feel for what is your type of movie and what isn't, and it just kind of your radar sort of gets set into like I kind of know what my expectations are, and I guess more importantly, I kind of know what my response is going to be to this kind of movie. And I guess the other thing is when you see that many movies, you also almost seems like it competes with what I just said, but you kind of just learn to not have very many expectations at all. You see enough movies that you think for sure like this is going to be right up my alley and it doesn't work, and then you see some movies that, you would have never thought you liked that turned out to be great. But that being said, there is one movie I can think that comes to mind that would properly answer that question. It's just not a new movie from 2019. So earlier in the year, I started listening to this podcast, Blank Check with Griffin and David. If you haven't listened to it, it's a great podcast. They go through the entire filmography of certain directors. They'll just pick a director and go film by film from start to finish through their filmographies. And it's really great. And I went through all of their backlog for the most part, at least for the movies I'd seen. And by the time I got caught up was like right when they were starting their Michael Mann marathon, I don't know, late summer, probably somewhere around then. And Michael Mann's a director that obviously I know sort of by reputation. I've seen Heat, but that's also about it. But like he's a guy that's you kind of like Michael Bay in a sense. Like even if you haven't seen very many Michael Mann films, you kind of have an idea in your head of what a Michael Mann film is. He's just kind of reached that sort of cultural osmosis sort of level of everyone kind of has an idea of, the De Niro versus Pacino kind of Heat's crime movie and stuff like that. But so they covered his first feature film, which was Thief from 1981. And I went ahead and watched it. Like, this is my first time being able to watch the movie before the podcast comes out and like do my homework and everything. And I was all just kind of excited for that part of it. But I was not ready at all for how much I was going to really like this film and how much it was going to still resonate with me, even though it's, close to 40 years old at this point. So as a brief synopsis, it's, as you would guess from the title, James Caan is the titular thief. He's technically a jewel thief. And it is on paper your typical Michael Mann kind of movie. It's shot really well. It involves some crime. With the big heist that comes about 3/4 of the way through the movie is kind of the big set piece. It's got a Tangerine Dream score. It's really good. It's a good Michael Mann movie. But as for the part that surprised me, I guess is like how relevant it was to today. And, I suppose that is not surprising. I mean, it's all about sort of the idea that it's kind of been my favorite movie of this year, of 2019, Parasite, which is another great movie. If you haven't seen Parasite and you can see it in theaters still, you should go see it. If not, wait a little while. I'm sure it'll be on VOD or Blu-ray pretty soon. You should totally watch it. It's great. But both of those movies, both Thief and Parasite, are both kind of generally about how, class is one of the oldest and longest running dividing lines between people, of how once you are stuck in a certain level, it's very hard to rise up above that level into another kind of stratosphere. And I mean, this should not be surprising. We have this conversation all the time about how everything is inherently political, but I guess in a time and era where you have to continually say that because people like to argue otherwise, I guess it is just nice to see a movie that is so blatantly political. I mean, just go on to IMDb and look at some of the quotes. Like, they are not being subtle about this kind of stuff at all. James Caan is the titular jewel thief, and he gets roped into running these jobs for a mob boss essentially, and he wants to get out of the life of crime. The mob boss wants to keep him in it, and he owes everything to this mob boss he's working for. He has all of his money thanks to him, and once again, it's not subtle at all, but that's kind of what I appreciate about it in a way of now where you have video games that take place in a post-apocalyptic Washington D.C. and the developers are trying to say that it's not political. I guess I just really appreciate that it wears that aspect of it on its sleeve. So yeah, we'll take this as kind of my Drew recommends a movie to you. Go see Thief, Michael Mann's 1981 feature film debut, Thief. It's a great movie. There's a great Criterion release if you're into that whole sort of thing. I'm sure it's streaming on VOD somewhere if you want to just rent it for $3 or $4 or whatever. Totally worth it. A good way to spend 2 hours of your time. All right, well, that's going to do it for our questions and answers for November. We've only got 1 more month to go until we hit 2020. So I'll make a new post sometime soon where you can ask the last questions for the year. And until then, I'll see you later. Bye.